Welcome back. Let's take a wrap of what happened this week now. It certainly has been a busy one on the news front. From revelations that ANC NEC member Derek Hanekom plotted with the EFF to oust former President Jacob Zuma, to the State Capture Commission hearing that fear and death threats were prevalent when people queried the failed Estina Dairy Farm project in the Free State. There's also the PIC Inquiry that's also still underway, and it heard that hitmen were after those close to former PIC boss Dan Matjila, and in the recently released book, billionaire businessman Johan Rupert saying that he wants to leave South Africa allegedly because Deputy President David Mabuza is too close to becoming president. So let's get some analysis on some of these stories with political analyst Sandile Swana. Good to see you again. Let's start at the top. Derek Hanekom and the ANC.
Thank you, Sakina. The matter of Derek Hanekom and the ANC is very tricky, and what makes it tricky is that the ANC is struggling, has been struggling for some time to run according to the ANC constitution. So if the ANC was running according to the ANC constitution consistently, so we would know exactly what was going to happen. Now we don't know, because somebody must conjure up a story of how to deal with this breach of the constitution of the African National Congress. So that is the problem that we're facing. Now you are going to start to hear stories, and I did hear Mavuso Msimang stating that even Ace Magashule is allegedly having been involved in trying to form another party. So you find that people now start to say there are others who did comparable things. The case in point here is the case of Derek Hanekom and whether his behavior actually complied with the constitution of the African National Congress. So, and he's not denying what he did.
So if you were to help the ANC out here, as you say, there seems to be a bit of a stalemate. They're not sure how to deal with some of these very serious allegations against very senior members of the party. What should they do?
I think in the African National Congress, there are two people who have spoken clearly about the problem and the solution. The first one was Mandela back in the 1990s, 1998, 1999, when he said there are certain elements in the ANC who are bringing in criminality and irregularity on a large scale, and they must be identified and expelled from the African National Congress. At that time, I want to believe Cyril was still the Secretary General of the African National Congress and Thabo Mbeki deputy president, and they didn't attend to that issue, and it has grown worse. Thabo Mbeki recently has said the problems in the ANC are systemic. In other words, the problem you see at national level, like Derek Hanekom, you'll find that people are doing the same thing somewhere in Vryheid, somewhere in Umtata. The local branch level, that treachery, that lack of discipline and non-adherence to the constitution is wise. So you need a systemic cleansing of the ANC where you start to get people back into constitutionality within the African National Congress. And you can't do that in a hurry.
But given the ANC of 2019, given the caliber of ANC cadre in 2019, the state of the organization, are they able to do that? Just this week, you had two members of the party, senior in the Mogalakwena district, gunned down in broad daylight because they were allegedly probing some malfeasance in that municipality.
I will put it in a different way. The African National Congress exists, and it is trying to also have a future. And unfortunately, because it is the biggest party in our country, we have to expect it to do something with itself. It's like all of us, whether you have a problem of unfitness or whatever it is, you've got to deal with it yourself. The first agent that must deal with it is yourself. So I think that somewhere along the line, and there are other problems, that there are many promises that they've made. For instance, I mean, the Reserve Bank has released a statistic that, you know, since 1945, we've not had they've broken a record in the downward decline of the economy. So it's not just a collapse in governance. Even the so-called big investment summit, job summits that Cyril is going to come in and do wonders, all of that is not materializing. So the ANC, both factions, if there are two factions, have got to stop and say this thing is sinking. let's try and restructure ourselves and get to a place where we can offer something to South Africa. They have got to do it themselves. Otherwise, they've got to cease to exist.
And speaking of the economy and its declining fortunes, in this new book, Stellenbosch Mafia, Johan Rupert, billionaire businessman, is reported to have said that, you know, he doesn't see much hope. He's rather pessimistic about the trajectory of the economy and the country, I suppose, by extension, and that he would even consider leaving. And amongst the things that he is fearful of is a David Mabuza presidency.
I think maybe I'll say three things about this. The first one is that some of us have lived for more than 5 decades in this country under terrible presidents, and we never offered to leave. And there are other tycoons who have been here under apartheid, under states of emergencies, and so on. Even if David Mabuza was to be the president, we've had Botha here, we've had de Klerk, we've had Foster, we've had many bad presidents here. We've had Zuma for 2 terms. So there's no problem. We've had many bad presidents. There's nothing new there. I do not know what is so unique about David Mabuza that, that in 6 decades, Johan Rupert never ran away from this country. Now, all of a sudden, David Mabuza is worse than all of them. So that is a non-starter of an argument. At the same time, there's a problem with this statement by Johan Rupert that he's making. He needs to understand that South Africa is a democracy. Now, in a democracy, you elect geniuses and you elect idiots. They have Boris Johnson in the UK. They have Donald Trump over there in the United States of America. So, in a democracy, that's the gamble you take, and you've got to live with it.
So, saying with David Mabuza answering questions in Parliament yesterday, he said he's going to let the courts decide on this matter between the public protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane and Minister Pravin Gordhan. And some feel that he neatly sidestepped the issue. What's your take on his response to that particular matter?
Well, he's not the only one who is. I mean, I really admired as well Pule Mabe in answering these questions that you are asking me around this public protector issue, because the ANC itself is so divided. So you've got to be careful, whoever you are, that you are not seen to be attacking the public institutions, which the ANC has had a history of doing. I think that hopefully when they come out of this meeting over the weekend, they are going to come up with some way forward. But we don't expect anything dramatic. Something dramatic is going to come from the opposition, not from the ANC.
And then looking at other issues, the commissions of inquiry, PIC, Dan Matjila still testifying at the PIC inquiry, and IO Technologies, Segun Jalo coming under the spotlight. And we heard from previous people who testified there from the PIC how those shares were overvalued. But Dan Matjila seemingly not believing that that may be the case.
I think Dan Matjila is performing, in terms of his report, I'm trying to be polite here, he has got a duty of working with care and skill. And when I've listened to his testimony, in terms of valuations, and he's an expert on financial mathematics, in terms of valuations, he has admitted that he's gotten it wrong in other transactions. Some of the companies invested in were bankrupt. IO transaction, there are big questions that a person of his skill should have been able to see that there are problems here. And to me, Dan Matjila was not using mathematical finance to make decisions. He was influenced by other things.
So the broader question for me around the PIC is, if you look at the losses incurred by the PIC in some of these very dubious investment decisions that they've taken, what should we be making of that as the broader public, and especially those whose monies are being used to make these investments?
The issue here, quite correctly indeed, there's more than 2 trillion rands in the PIC, and Dan Matjila has come up with this story that these investments are small compared to to the whole portfolio. But these are losses of workers' monies. I mean, the people who depend on the PIC are more than the population of Swaziland. It's a whole group of people. Now, the problem that Dan Matjila has is that he actually sold himself out to ANC politicians, and the decisions he was making were of a political nature, not of a financial nature or economic nature. That is the problem, and that is the problem that needs to be solved. And even with this board that is coming in there, we need to be satisfied, even as trade unions and so on and so forth, that the people who are being brought in there are not puppets of the African National Congress or puppets of politicians. These are professionals who are there to do an independent supervision of the operations of the PIC.
We press for time, and I want to move on to the public protector issue, but I can't let this slide on the issue of boards and who are appointed to boards on different companies, and especially state-owned enterprises. We've seen, you know, the recycling of people who go from one entity where they mess up royally and yet find themselves appointed very nicely in cushy positions at another entity. What should be done about that particular situation?
The problem that we have here is that, I mean, if you listen to the testimony of David Mabuza, who's now the chairperson of Telkom, chairperson of Eskom now, he said that he just got a call from the senior comrades that he must now go be a chairman of Eskom. So this thing is allocated to buddies. I mean, if you're drinking buddies or you play golf with the top guns in the ANC, you're going to find yourself in the board. We don't know what rigorous process was followed, what recruitment process was followed to appoint the board at the PIC. What did they actually do to get there? How did they get these people? And these people have been board members at Transnet and elsewhere. They are moving around. So this thing needs to come back, and we need a rigorous process of review. If Parliament needs to get involved, Parliament must get some independent process needs to take place.
And just finally, the public protector. So there's a lot happening around the public protector. But just to touch on the latest now that she's investigating the recruitment of the SARS Commissioner, Edward Kiswetter. So again, the public protector right in the thick of things. I'll
go with the views of the Chief Justice here. The Chief Justice has said to us in a minority judgment that we should not intimidate the public protector. We should allow the public protector to investigate everybody where there is suspicion. And I think we need to embrace that. And also, I might as well add that the words of the IFP in Parliament concerning this other report that our president said is going to take on review and interdict and other things. The words of the Hlengwa of the IFP, where he said that perhaps Parliament needs to appoint its own committee to investigate Ramaphosa. If Ramaphosa says the reports of the public protector are irrational and so on, and is going to interdict them, then let him go to a committee of Parliament and let it investigate him to his satisfaction.
And I suppose the one thing we keep forgetting is that when the public protector investigates, is because she's received complaints. The office has received complaints from somewhere, so she's duty-bound to investigate.
Yes, I think there are two people I would like to talk about there. The one is Steenhuisen. Steenhuisen sent a complaint to the public protector regarding Gigaba, and Gigaba lost his job as a result of the findings of the public. Steenhuisen was very happy with the public protector, and the public protector was competent then. Lately, Steenhuisen is saying the public protector is not competent. Helen Zille comes in and says, hey, you should not have taken the report about Cyril Ramaphosa to the public protector. But they've done it successfully before with Gigaba. It has worked before. What will stop it from working now? Because if Gigaba was a supporter of Jacob Zuma through and through, and she threw him under the bus. So what is wrong with Cyril? Why must Cyril be immunized from proper scrutiny and investigation?
Well, Sandile Swana, thanks so much for speaking to us, political analyst, on some of the big news stories of the week. Brings us up to news.